Welcome back to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Rao Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We have a spectacular nation-lifting guest for you today that's going to give you the inside scoop and exclamation for what the heck is going on inside the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. right now. We have Elyssa Schmier of Moms Rising. Welcome, Elyssa.
Hi, how are you?
I am both happy to be here with you and furious about what's happening inside our nation's capital right now. I'm happy you're here because you can explain what's happening and share how the voices of moms, dads, parents, and people are slowing down terrible policy. But, what is happening?
Yeah, terrible, awful, stressful, unnecessary. These are all words that are totally valid and describe what's going on in the Republican-led House of Representatives right now. So this has been a pretty marathon couple of days. They are actively, very quickly, oftentimes in the dead of night, pushing forward their what Donald Trump calls the big beautiful bill. I call the giant awful dumpster fire, which is a budget and tax cut bill. And I'm going to focus on the budget piece first because that explains, the awfulness of all of this. So this is a massively large bill that is attempting to make historical changes to the healthcare, nutrition, education, housing, and other policies that our families and communities have used for decades. Proven programs that save families, fund money into our economy, and help businesses. So I'll go through some of the highlights or lowlights, so to speak, of what's going on right now. So the House Republicans, the bill that they are proposing that they are trying to vote on in the next couple of days would make major cuts to Medicaid and increase work requirements in order to access health care. What they're looking at between Medicaid cuts and changes to the ACA premium tax credits that are going to expire, this will result in 13.7 million people going uninsured, losing their health insurance. And that includes 40 million children. So that's bad enough as it is. They're proposing cutting more than 300 billion from SNAP food stamps. This is the largest cut in the history of this program. This is going to lead to around 3 million people losing SNAP entirely. And then an additional couple million of people are going to see a massive reduction in their SNAP dollars each month. And let's be clear, they get about $6.15 per meal per day in order to feed themselves. So reducing it even further at a time when we're seeing record high grocery prices makes absolutely zero sense. And then they're also doing two major things to food stamps that people should be aware of. One is they're proposing additional work requirements. So right now, the vast majority of SNAP and Medicaid recipients do work. But right now, the exemption is for people with children under the age of 18. They're doing a very large shift from that, and they're saying that work requirements will be extended to parents with children over the age of 7. I believe that the chairman of the Ag Committee actually said that if your child goes to school, the parent can go to work, which, as a parent of a 3-year-old, I don't expect my situation to change that vastly when he's 7 in terms of my child's care needs and before and after school care. What do you do during the summer? What happens when they're sick? So that entire situation is disgusting and will lead to children going hungry. And then the other major change is they're doing a shift to the states and making states more responsible for paying SNAP dollars. Right now, it's mainly the federal government that handles that. And that cost shift while it seems kind of wonky, is actually a really big deal because, as many of you probably know, states are having their own budget crisis right now, and they just simply can't afford to pick up the bill that House Republicans are trying to leave on the table. Um, a couple other key things that people should know about this bill is they have $5 billion. Sorry about my dog. $5 billion for private school vouchers in the bill. They're trying to sneak that in, and they don't do a lot of things that we were thinking that they could do. Like, this is a tremendous opportunity to expand the child tax credit, to invest in childcare, to invest in paid family leave. They don't do any of that, but they do massively cut our education, healthcare, and nutrition programs. And the reason they're doing that is to give trillions of dollars in tax cuts to billionaires and mega corporations. And it's very clear of that is the goal. That is what they're trying to do. It was all over the statements that they were making. And basically, they're going to give millionaires a $68,000 tax cut, and the top 0.1%, so the wealthiest people in this country, are going to get a $300,000 tax cut, while raising taxes or doing nothing for 33 million working class households.
That's ridiculous. It's outrageous. And I have to say to our listeners, if you were listening closely to this list of doom and thinking the math isn't mathing, you are right. Right now, we have, and I'll just give a little summary about what Elyssa just shared. We have massive cuts to programs that allow families to thrive, that allow parents to go to work, that allow our economy to be strong, happening by Republican leaders, all to give tax breaks to people who are already very wealthy. And we know from history that there is no such thing as trickle-down effect of giving tax breaks to people who are already wealthy. Instead, what it does is suction or vacuum that money right out of our economy in a very bad way. So what is happening? And I want to share a little bit more about the economics and the math of this non-mathing situation. We talked about SNAP being cut by Republicans and Donald Trump. Well, when SNAP is cut by Republicans and Donald Trump, we actually hurt our economy, because when we have SNAP, which is food stamps, people most immediately use those funds to buy the food in the grocery store, which supports the grocery store, which supports the truck driver that brought the food to the grocery store, which supports the farmer that grew the food in the first place. And the list goes on and on. In other words, SNAP boosts our economy. And Republican analysis show that for every $1 in SNAP, because of that, we get $1.79 back later. Similarly, we have math that actually shows the return on investment for everything that Republicans and Donald Trump are trying to cut. Childcare, for every $1 invested, we get back at least $8 later. Healthcare, we not only get back money later, because if you treat an illness early, you save money in the long run. We also save lives. Hello, everybody gets sick. Everybody needs a chance to get better. So these cuts that Republicans and Donald Trump are making hurt the economy, all to give more tax breaks to the ultra wealthy. And I've had questions. People, I know you have questions. We hear questions like, hey, don't we need to spend less as America to have these programs? Well, the way to have the fair taxation system work is to have wealthy people and corporations pay their fair share. And many wealthy people are paying per percentage of their income much less than people who are lower and moderate income people are paying in their taxes. So my hair is on fire. I'm outraged. And Elyssa, one of the things that you and I have talked about a lot is that in this moment, when the math isn't mathing, when the policy isn't policying, when our Republican leaders and Donald Trump are not working for us, our voices are more powerful, more essential, and having an impact more than many of us would even imagine. So can you give us a little bit of a background on how do you see the calls, the letters, the petitions, the meetings, the rallies making a difference in the direction of policy right now?
Yeah, I think, absent of the ability to actually like write the bills ourselves, our voices and that type of grassroots natural pressure, I think is incredibly important. And it's working, because let's be clear, the Republicans have the White House and both chambers of Congress. This bill should have been passed in February. It is now May, and they are still not even sure what's going to happen and what the path forward is. And a lot of that is because we've had the ability to completely slow down the process. There is now a growing chorus of Republicans who are saying, both behind closed doors, and, out in the public, that they are very nervous about the size of the Medicaid cuts that are happening, and that they recognize that that will hurt their local communities, that that will decimate healthcare in rural communities, especially, that they recognize the amount of people that that program helps. So we are seeing that that is helping to slow down the process. We are starting to see that states, even Republican states, are saying, the governors are saying, there is no way that we can cover the cost for SNAP and other pieces that the federal government is going to shift to the states. And so I think that this using our voice is actually, we're starting to see it work. And also, it's not a given that this bill is going to pass the House, no matter how quickly Speaker Johnson's trying to jam that thing through and try and get that vote as soon as possible. And even if it does, it's almost dead on arrival in the Senate. There was a very conservative Republican senator who said the other day that this House bill is basically the Titanic, and the Senate is the iceberg that it's about to run into. So they are already saying that they're going to go back to the drawing board and redraft this bill. Now, I don't think that the Republican senators are actually going to do a super great job at that either. So we're going to have to continue to apply that pressure. The goal is that this bill doesn't see the light of day, never makes it to Donald Trump's office in the first place in any way, shape, or form. But we can't get tired. We need to keep speaking up because it's actually working. I mean, it's very obvious that it's working.
And I want to tell listeners, you heard it directly from somebody who is inside the Beltway, talking with members of Congress, talking with staff inside the Beltway every day, that your voice, your power, your calls, your letters to the editor, your meetings, your rallies, your stories are making a huge, huge, huge difference. And we also know this is a marathon and not a sprint. And we also know there's a lot on the line. There's our family's health on the line. There's our economy on the line. There's our own economic security on the line. And all of us in our communities and our democracy is on the line. So please, please, please keep the calls going into Congress. Say hands off Medicaid, hands off childcare, hands off SNAP. Make sure that your budget and your tax system works for us. Don't give a big giveaway to people who are already wealthy. They don't need more money. We need to boost the economy, not people like Elon Musk. Thank you so much for being on, Elyssa. Do you have a last 30-second thought on an action for people to take?
Yeah, just call your House representative today. Do it right now and make your voice heard. Tell them to vote no on the Republican budget, and they will know exactly what that means.
Thank you. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for being on. Thanks for being a superhero for families. Thank you.